Welcome to the Castaway Consultants Podcast.
Where we, the three co-hosts who've never played the game, judge Survivor contestants on a game we've never played from the safety of our own home.
I am one of your three hosts, Ryan Stacy, a massive super fan of Survivor, and I'm joined by my two somewhat good friends,
Derek Kubicek, and I am the Survivor early season virgin. I am the Virgil. I've never seen any of this, and I have minimal spoilers, despite considering myself a super fan basically with season 27 onward.
And I am Josh Wessler. I am the middle of the road. I have watched most seasons of Survivor. I should calculate the percentage one of these times, but it's like 75%.
Yeah.
And for this specific episode, we're going to be talking about season 2, which I ended up watching about 5-ish years ago. So I got a nice little unique perspective on how memorable the season is.
Yes. And like Josh said, we're talking about the second half, the post-merge of Survivor Season 2, the Australian Outback. Basically, we are rewatching it, so you don't have to. We're going to go back, talk through the entirety of the second half of the season, talk about whether this is must-watch Survivor or not, which we'll talk about in just a minute here. We would love it if you would go back and watch every single season of Survivor like we are, but you can't.
I was going to say, ideally, just watch all of it.
Yep.
But you all are busy people. You've got things to do, and apparently we don't.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to talk about this in just a minute, whether this second half of the season is worth your time. Is this must-watch Survivor? And then we're going to get into everything. We're going to talk through all of the decisions made in the season, who was playing well, who was terrible, did the right person win.
If you somehow stumbled upon this episode, this is the second part of season 2,
Yep.
So make sure to go back and watch the first if you have not yet.
Because we will be spoiling the entirety of the season, so
Yep.
get out of here if you don't want to listen to it.
Unless you really just don't care about the first half of Survivor seasons, then sure, welcome.
Yeah, by all means. First things first, just for anybody who is wondering whether they should go back and watch this half of the season, is the second half, is the post-merge of Survivor Season 2, must-watch Survivor?
I would say it is must-watch just because I really like the first half of season 2, and I wouldn't really chop up a season into two different opinions on that. If you're committing to watch the first half, might as well commit to watching the second half, even if it isn't the greatest television out there.
I'll qualify everything with this. Season 2 as a whole is must-watch Survivor together. So in that way, I agree with Josh. Going into the post-merge, if you've watched the pre-merge and you care about the characters, you need to watch it. But if you're wanting time and just the meat, skip the first part of the finale and just go straight to the reunion show. You don't need any of the final 2 episodes. That's my thought.
I'm going to take a little harder stance. No, this is not must-watch Survivor. The first half of Season 2 is. The merge episode is very good. And there's one more merge episode. There's one episode that I think is the most survival-focused episode of the entire series, where they're dealing with a flood and stuff like that. So I think in grand total, there's 2 excellent episodes in the post-merge, and the rest of it is kind of a snooze fest. Especially after the merge boot, it's very predictable. It's not like a straight line boot order, but it's pretty obvious who's going to make it to the end. So no, this is not must-watch Survivor. Yeah, there's 2 episodes that are worth watching. The merge boot, the merge episode, which is episode 7, titled The Merge, worth watching. And then skip ahead to episode 12, No Longer Just a Game, if you want some really cool survival stuff. And the rest of this is not worth your time, if you're picking and choosing what Survivor to watch. If you can't watch it all,
that's assuming that you're listening through this podcast. So
yeah.
Listen to the podcast, pick and choose a couple cool episodes that are kind of significant in just the world of Survivor, and call it good.
Ryan over here spitting hot fire.
Yes.
First, not must-watch Survivor.
Yes. This part of the season gets very boring by the end, especially. I will go ahead and say the finale might be the most boring episode of Survivor there is.
So we'll try not to be boring.
Yeah, we'll try and be more entertaining than some of the episodes of the season. But from here on out, there will be spoilers, so choose to continue at your own risk.
So then, who's got a quick refresher of the cast?
So we're coming into this merge 5-5, with 5 remaining members of Kucha and 5 of Ogrecore. And on the Kucha tribe, we have Jeff Varner, an internal project manager from New York City, Alicia Calloway, a personal trainer also from New York City, Nick Brown, a Harvard law student from Washington State, Roger Bingham, a teacher/farmer from Kentucky, and Elizabeth Flarsky, footwear designer from Massachusetts. On the Ogrecore tribe, We have Jerry Manthe, an aspiring actress from Los Angeles. Amber Burkich, an administrative assistant from Pennsylvania. Keith Amy, a chef from Michigan. Colby Donaldson, an auto customizer from Texas. And Tina Wesson, a personal nurse from Tennessee. Those are our final 10.
And just as a reminder, at the very end of the pre-merge, we unexpectedly went from going into the merge 6-4 to going in 5-5.
Yes.
Very significant.
Because Michael fell in the fire. Now, before we get into this episode, something we forgot to do last time is I want to bring up everybody who is going to be a returning player and just talk about whether or not we're excited to see them play again or anything like that. I mean, I didn't do this last time, but we have 2 people we need to talk about real quick. First is Kimmy, the vegetarian. Are you guys excited to see Kimmy come back?
She's good TV. I don't need her on Survivor, but I wouldn't be downtrodden to see her again.
I could really care less. It's more just like, I feel like you could find other people that would end up being more entertaining. She would typically be someone that would get on my nerves a little bit more, but that doesn't mean that her playing style can't change and her personality, her at least on TV personality, can't change. So although I wouldn't really prefer it, I guess I'd be okay with it.
No, get her out of here. I don't want to ever see her again. I can't stand Kimmy. She's...
Thank you for saying what I was thinking.
Get her out of here. I don't want to see her again. And the other person we have to talk about is Michael Skupin. Do your research on him, folks. So putting aside everything we know about him from outside of the game, at the time of play, obviously nobody knew what happened with him. Do you guys want to see Michael Skupin back on the Survivor after falling in the fire?
100%.
Yes.
If we're just looking at in-game Michael Skupin, absolutely. He was the type of person that everyone really liked on his tribe. Felt like he would have gone fairly far. We don't really know. He might have been one of the first people out after the merge if they would have actually had depending on how the numbers kind of lined up. But I think anyone who gets medically evacuated for something outside of just like their own fault, I guess,
yeah,
should probably get a chance as long as there's room in a season and they weren't really crappy up until then.
Yeah, as a player, I'd be excited to see Michael come back. My first thought, because I like to bring everything back to modern Survivor, which is what I know, I don't think he would last long. I think his antics with the food would get people frustrated with him really quickly. He kind of was not... He was very weak at his social game and building friendships, at least the edit that we got. So I don't think he would last long. And being a provider isn't as important as it was. I didn't even know that was a role until I watched season 1 for the first time. So would I want to see him again? Absolutely. Do I think he would do well? No, I don't.
And he got a boar.
Yes.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, on paper, just from Survivor Australia, I would like to see Michael Skupin play again. Just because I think it'd be interesting to see what he could do if given a second shot.
Now today...
No.
Google.
Hell no.
Google Michael Skupin.
No.
Yeah, we don't want him. Get him as far away from Survivor as possible. But yeah, in 2001, yes, bring it back. 2019, no. Hell no. All right, so yeah, I think that's all the intro stuff. Let's get into these episodes. Okay, so let's just jump right into this episode 7, The Merge. So a lot of this episode is kind of boring. It's just the 2 tribes interacting for the first time, saying how nice the other tribe is. Yawn.
For me watching it the second time, I know I said it before, but I watched the premiere, the merge episode, and the finale. So this is the merge episode. I actually watched this one. I don't remember it being this dull. They focus on the merge feast, this is the first merge feast.
Yep.
There wasn't one in season 1. That might be why they kind of focused on it a little bit more, but now looking back at what Survivor looks like now, there's usually a little bit more going on instead of just like, oh yeah, everyone's nice, yeah, random quotes, okay, cool.
Yeah, the first 20 minutes of this is a snooze. The second 20 minutes are great, but the first 20 minutes, I'm asleep.
Yeah.
Well, and that's not entirely true. One thing from the beginning of this episode that we don't actually see in the pre-merge is Jeff talking about how he's scared that Kimmy gave up that he has a vote.
Yeah.
So you get that right off the bat, and we don't really know where that comes from or really how that comes into play. You can tell they were just trying to set up for what was going to happen later because Tina, as we mentioned in the last episode, pulled a fast one on production in the pre-merge.
Yeah, Kucha knows that Ogakor knows about the vote on Jeff. And so the fact that they know this, it's really damning of Jeff's actions in this episode.
Absolutely.
Which we'll get into. But that's the thing is that we need to point out is they know Ogakor knows.
So way to go, Kimmy. Not only does Michael fall in the fire, but you've now kicked your own tribe while they're down.
I don't even want to put too much blame on Kimmy. I mean, yeah, she screwed up, but they could have saved themselves here, and they don't.
Oh, I agree. 100%.
So basically, out of all the Kucha people, Jeff is the only one with any votes. Turns out he has 2. They only know about 1, to be fair. The other 4 of them don't have any votes on them, right? With Okafor, Keith and Jerry both have votes, so they need to protect themselves. And so Jerry is doing her best not to trash Keith too much to the other tribe.
Which, good on her.
Good on her. I mean, she does a good enough job, I think.
Mm-hmm. Makes an effort.
It's sad how difficult it is for her.
Yeah.
It really shouldn't be that hard, but you can tell she's struggling with it.
It's really funny.
Oh, it's really good TV.
Oh, yes.
That's for sure. I'm just hating on Jerry as a person, that it should not be that difficult for you to just keep your trap shut.
Yep.
We get far enough into the episode where I actually liked Jerry a little bit. It was almost some character development, but she'll fall back into her ways.
Yes. Immediately after they merge, they get to a new beach, they have to build a new shelter, and Jerry wants to build a shelter near the river in
Good idea.
Dry creek bed.
Do it. What could go wrong?
Nothing could go wrong.
Absolutely nothing could go wrong. And
Don't listen to Roger. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He didn't build houses.
It's dry. Who cares?
yeah, it's a dry creek bed.
Better
Obviously,
for sleeping.
fine. This will pay off later. This is a terrible move. Don't ever build your shelter that close to the water. Nothing good can happen. So here's the big stuff from this episode. Is this immunity challenge, which is kind of a cool immunity challenge. They all have to stand out on a post in the middle of the water, and it's not like it's a difficult platform to stand on. It's just pure willpower. How long can you stay out there? And it goes on for like 10 hours.
10 and a half.
I believe it's the second longest Survivor challenge of all time. There's lots to talk about here. Derek, you want to start us off?
Whenever I see an endurance challenge, I always say out loud to the television and to whoever's in the room with me, I will pass out before I lose an endurance challenge. That's who I am. That's how stubborn I can be. And so when other people don't do that, it's a dark mark on their record for me. So Nick jumps off pretty early on. It was an hour and a half in. I did not realize that he was ill. He even talks about it later in the reunion show, saying that standing made him dizzy. He was physically out of it. Okay, you're sick. I get it. You're only doing yourself more harm in the long run. But then Colby, he does something really interesting here. He jumps off not too long after that to try and get the attention of the other tribe in order to draw votes away from Keith and Jerry, whom we mentioned earlier would lose a tiebreaker.
Yeah, because we still have the tiebreaker rules in effect. So basically, Jeff, Keith, and Jerry need to win this thing. And Colby gets down to draw votes because he doesn't have any previous votes. In a tiebreaker situation, if he's the one to get to votes and they throw their 5 on Jeff, Colby's safe. So it's a great strategy short term for the Okafor tribe as a whole. It's not so great for Colby long term because a future tiebreaker down the road could screw him over. But you got to get through this round to win the game.
And he also takes his chance to talk to Nick, too.
Yep.
So just like one-on-one, he might be able to toss out things like, oh, yeah, man, I'm really worried about the next vote for me.
And then a little bit later, Jeff offers incentives for people to drop. He brings out some apples, peanut butter, and chocolate. Roger jumps down for this, but Colby's a little bit obnoxious with because he and Nick get to partake in this food as well. And Colby's like, this is so good, and trying to draw votes. But this is the move of the episode because Jeff Varner is considering jumping for the peanut butter. And he's like, y'all vote me out, though. And Colby's like, oh, but those girls, look at them, they're tough. You can't beat them. Jeff jumps down and loses the game.
Bad move.
It's not just the bad move. It's the worst move of the entire season.
It's not the worst move in the entire season, and I'll get to that.
Yeah,
but
second worst move of the season.
But you can't have $1 million mistake at the merge episode.
Yeah.
But you can have a losing mistake. And Jeff, if you're not passing out and you know you have 2 votes on you, you have no excuses. I don't care if it's peanut butter. Bad move.
I think it's very close to being the worst.
Oh, it's a horrendous move. But the worst move comes at the final 3.
Maybe.
Yes, 100%.
Maybe.
Anyways, as we keep going through this endurance challenge, which again, great TV. I love these. I'm always on the edge of my seat. Just seeing that number in the corner of the screen, how long they've been doing it, I feel that in my chest. We get a couple more temptations. Jerry and Amber are going to jump for ice cream and hot chocolate. Just a reminder, they had been sexually fantasizing men and chocolate in a previous episode. So they kind of were able to give the audience a bit of a payoff on that, I guess.
We did mention that Jerry had previous votes, but she only has 1, whereas Jeff has 2.
Right.
So Jeff's out of the game. She doesn't have to win anymore. Keith's the one who has to win now.
Right. So now it's lower stakes for the Ogre tribe, except for Keith.
Yep. Might as well get some ice cream and hot chocolate.
Now, the rest of these people are going to stand up here for 10 hours.
Yep.
And finally, Jeff says, hey, is there anything I can do? And Elizabeth says, hey, if you just give me a boat ride in and some coffee, I'm done.
No, Elizabeth just does it for the boat ride. Alicia comes down next. She does it for a coffee and a boat ride.
So, okay.
They don't want to get cold. Because it's the middle of the night now.
So I think that anyone on the Kucha tribe should not be jumping down at this point. Because not only does Jeff's game rest in your hands, your own game rests in your hands here. Because it's safe to at least assume that tribal lines are going to be kept throughout this entire thing. If you know that they're going to go for Jeff and he's going to get voted out, you're not going to be far behind, so you might as well take it as far as possible and just try to have someone on your tribe win immunity. Yes, Jeff should have been the one to stick it out as long as possible, but any of these other people on that tribe that jump, they have no one to blame but themselves.
If they had beaten Keith, they could have won this. I don't know if they would have voted for Keith.
And probably not.
Who knows? We don't really know how good a job they did at hiding it, but it wasn't over for them yet. But by the time the two of them jump, it's done. They're done.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I love that the game hinged on this fight of willpower. Here in the merge episode, Elizabeth steps down, and then Alicia steps down. We had 2 Ogre members left.
Tina and Keith.
Now, I think, one, that's reflective of the fact that Ogre has struggled up until this point and only recently has been given 2 very huge breaks, and they are taking advantage. Now, can I just take a second and say that I think, hands down, Tina wins this challenge if she wants to?
Yes. I've stated this before, and I'll say it again. I think Tina Wesson is the most stubborn, competitive survivor of all time. And I don't think the edit, especially in this season, shows enough of it. I think she's the most stubborn, competitive survivor there has ever been and ever will be.
She stood on that post, and she did not look like she cared.
I think she'd still be standing out there if the game was still going on. I don't think you get Tina off that pole unless it was for the greater good of her game, which this was.
So, at the end of the previous podcast episode, I was already like, who is this Tina? They didn't even show her in episode 1, but she turned into my winner pick. And then here she is standing on this post for 10.5 hours. I was an immediate fan from here on out. So I'll just leave it at that. Someone else take it away before I get too gushy.
But anyway, so Keith tells Tina, he's like, I need this. Please step down. And Tina does, because Tina has 0 votes. Keith's got 3. Keith has to win this. So she does. Keith wins.
And this is a great move by Tina, but and I don't really quite remember, but if it was kind of instigated by Keith, that's a great move by Keith as well. Because if she would have not really thought about that, which she probably would have ended up thinking about it like on her own.
Yeah.
And if he brings it up, I give the credit to him.
And underreported, Keith did stand out there for 10 hours.
Yeah.
Like, we talked how just amazing things about Tina, but Keith did this too.
He didn't seem like he was struggling either.
No.
Neither of them did.
Great on Keith, great on Tina. 100% well played by them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we go to Tribal Council immediately. Predictable, 5 votes for Colby, 5 votes for Jeff. And there's a revote. Jeff goes home.
And it seemed like kind of like the climax of the episode was more the immunity win, and knowing just like we all know what's gonna end up happening here.
It's over.
Yeah, instead of it being tribal, it's the immunity win.
Ogre played this 100% correct, and Kucha failed miserably. I think it's safe to say.
And they didn't fail at Tribal Council, per se, because they didn't have a chance at that point. They had already, like Josh said, made their catastrophic mistake.
You know, they throw their 5 votes on Colby, which is the mistake, and I think that's just credit to Ogre for hiding who had the votes so well.
Who do you think is the best player of the episode then?
I think I have to give it to Colby for drawing the votes away from Keith and getting Jeff to jump down and getting the numbers advantage. You know, I think so much credit can be given to Colby, Tina, and Keith, but I just think Colby overall did the most.
Yeah, I would also narrow it down to one of those 3, and Colby just inches them out.
Yeah, barely.
Big surprise, but I'm going to say that it was Tina. She stood out there for 10.5 hours, and then she stepped off the post, and she still wins in all tiebreaker situations going forward because she has no votes.
Yeah.
I know it's a game of inches here, and technically Colby did more for his tribe, and I can't argue that point, but Damn, Tina.
Yeah, but if and trying to give a little bit more credit to Colby, if it wasn't for him, now there's no one knows what would have actually ended up happening. But who knows? Jeff might have just stayed up there also as long.
Doubtful, but possible.
Yes, I do doubt it.
Yeah, he's the one who got Jeff down. So yeah, like you said, it's like a game of an inch, and I'll give it to Colby. But worst player, it's a little tough to say because it's so clearly Jeff, but he can't win because he's eliminated.
I wish we could bend the rules.
I'm not going to let you.
Ooh, it's Kimmy.
It's Kimmy.
Coming back from the grave to be the worst player.
Yeah, the ramifications of Kimmy's actions. Kimmy and Jeff have the most negative impact on this episode, but out of the eligible players, it's tough. I'm just going to give it to Alicia because she comes away from the remaining 4 Kucha members as the biggest threat because she lasted the longest. So all 4 of the Kucha people you could throw blame at. Alicia's going to go next, and I think it's because of her performance in this episode. So I'm going to go with Alicia.
And I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. Off podcast, we've argued about this for about an hour.
Yes.
We are not going to do that to you guys. I say Elizabeth because the final 4 standing in the challenge were 2 Ogakor, 2 Kucha. The first 2 Kucha to jump, an older gentleman and someone who was sick. We already acknowledged that Jeff is a fool. So it's Alicia or it's Elizabeth. Elizabeth stepped down first. That to me says that she didn't want it as badly. It showed weakness, and I think that Alicia was already targeted and marked as a physical powerhouse. But I can't argue with Ryan's point either way.
And I will say one point to Derek's credit is at least Alicia got some coffee.
That is true.
And a ride in.
Yeah, they both got the ride in, but Alicia got coffee.
My opinion on this matter that I have to share just because we, like Derek said, had a long discussion about this. I sided with Ryan on this and have decided that Alicia was the worst player of the episode, but it's for different reasons.
Oh.
You say it's because it changed her kind of outlook going forward in the next episode and was maybe a little bit of an influence on why she was the next boot. I think she was the worst player because she was the one that should have been able to stop all this. She is the most physically fit player to play in this game, and so far in the first 2 seasons. She's definitely the most capable person out there to be able to stand there for an extended amount of time. So if anyone was to kind of step in the way, other than Jeff, to step in the way of Tina and Keith, and we've seen how also stubborn she is, there's no excuse. She should have just been able to win this, I think, very easily. Because she willingly stepped down, I think that it's no question that she's the worst player of the episode.
So Jeff Varner was just voted out, and he was our winner pick. So let's make new winner picks.
And I'm going to go completely off of what I remember myself thinking when I watched this 5-ish years ago. I was all aboard the Colby train. So I have to go with Colby. I liked him from, I think, episode 3-ish, whatever, when I started watching. And he was my guy all the way through. So I have to go with Colby.
Based on everything I've seen, it's going to be Tina.
And you didn't know Tina won the game.
I did not know that Tina was ultimately going to win. I loved everything. And then, of course, this is the episode that Jeff goes home. It's the one where she's standing on that post for 10.5 hours and just looks like she's a building. She's not going anywhere. She will choose to leave that post or she will win.
Now, is any of that influenced by behind-the-scenes knowledge that you know and not just strictly what you have seen on TV?
So I would be lying if I told you I was 100% certain that Ryan's 1.5 that he kind of gave me from the pre-merge, that she was doing this behind the scenes sifting. But that happens in every season. I loved Tina from the second that she cold-heartedly voted out Mad Dog. I was like, okay, we got ourselves a UTR player. I'm not, at that point, you don't know a UTR until they're top 8, top 7. It's really hard to identify, but you have the general archetypes. I was just thinking, okay, we got a UTR player, and then everything she did after that was right. She was playing Modern Survivor in season 2, and so I'm thinking, okay, we didn't see her in episode 1, but if I had seen anything like this in episode 1, she would have been my pick.
Sure. If you go back and look at confessional count, she is 0 in the first episode. Only person.
I made a note on that. I remember watching episode 2, I'm like, who is this lady? I think I even said something. Who is this? This skinny blonde lady on Ogakor. I have nothing.
My pick is Colby because my thought process is with Jeff going home, I would think Ogakor has got this. They'll vote out Jerry and Amber. Keith can't win. And I would just think Colby, he's got the best chance of making it to the end. I think he and Tina were the top two, and I think Colby's better in challenges, so I thought he would have a better chance of making it than Tina. Colby would be my pick to win from Jeff's boot.
And I didn't really have a great reasoning. It was just, I felt good about Colby.
Something about this guy.
Okay. Jeff Varner is gone here, and he will come back and play again. Again, he's another one who's going to completely destroy his reputation. But based off what we see in Survivor Australia, do you guys want to see Jeff Varner play again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he was all of our winner picks for a reason. He had so much potential, and honestly just was out because of bad luck on two separate occasions. The Michael Medevac and then Kimmy being Kimmy.
Yep.
So I 100% would like to see him again.
Yep, even though he made the fatal error for his own game, like Josh said, you can play really well up to a certain point, and there's only so much that's in your control. I want to see him again.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing with Jeff is, I think, had Michael Scoop not fallen in the fire, I think Jeff Varner wins this game.
As long as he doesn't get in his own way.
Yeah, that's the one thing. But I think, Michael, Elizabeth, and Roger all get voted out. The final three are Nick, Alicia, and Jeff. Who knows the others the best? Who knows? We know the final three challenges, Fallen Comrades. Could go any way on that one. But I think Jeff is overall a better player than Alicia or Nick. So I think my money's on Jeff. Okay, moving on. Episode 8, Friends, question mark?
Question mark?
So Kucha knows they're on the bottom, so they got to start finding a way. Basically, at this point for Kucha, what you need to do is either find a crack or just hold out long enough to make sure you're not the next Kucha to go. So Roger starts making himself useful in catching fish. So this is like the one time I think being a provider could be helpful, is if like you're on the bottom and you just need to buy yourself some time, be the one catching fish. They'll keep you over somebody else. I think that might help you in the short term.
Yeah, the 3 more day mentality is what you need to do when you're fighting for your life. Also, Elizabeth credit in this episode as well, because she is the first one on camera to say, I'm searching for cracks in the majority alliance. This is the first time that we've had merge game strategic gameplay. This is my bread and butter. This is all I know. Season 1 was so, we're an alliance and you're going to get pagonged. And now Elizabeth's like, hey, what about this whole Tina-Jerry fracture? And I'm just like, oh, we're finding it this early. Good on Elizabeth. So we've got Roger trying to be valuable by himself some time and Elizabeth looking for a way in.
Yeah, Roger's bonding with Keith. Elizabeth's bonding with Tina about how much they hate Jerry.
Gotta find something.
Gotta find something. Speaking of Jerry, we get to the reward challenge, which Jerry wins. And she gets to take somebody with her and picks Amber, her closest ally. Under the guise that Amber got second place, so I'm going to pick the person who got second place. This is terrible. Because nobody likes Jerry, and to get her and Amber out of the camp, and everybody kind of realizes how peaceful camp is without those two. And it's not really so much Amber, it's Jerry, but Amber's guilty by association. Everybody's just like, yeah, Jerry does suck. Bad move, Jerry.
And just that even if you're not an annoying person, just a general rule of thumb, you probably shouldn't just go with your best ally.
Pick someone you want to, improve relations with.
Or someone who you just don't want talking to other people.
Sure.
Even if you don't care how your relationship's going to go.
Take a Tina. I think Tina's the move here. Take Tina with you.
Sure.
Maybe you could mend some fences. So Colby, this is pretty great. He is kind of confronted by Jerry about what is going to happen next, and he ends up lying to her and Amber and says, yeah, we'll go to the final 3. We are a final 3 deal. And Colby knows. He's like, yeah, that's not true, but he does it anyway. Just bold-faced lie, and I love it.
Should it be?
Yeah?
I think so. I think you have to at that point. If someone wants to make a final 3 deal with you, you say yes.
Okay,
No.
so let me clarify. Not like should he, because I completely agree that you say yes in this situation. I'm saying, should he have made an actual final 3 with these two, other than kind of going down his other path?
And we can revisit this again in the final episode when we're talking about this, but yeah.
Sure.
I mean, in hindsight 2020, I say yes, but
Yeah, so why don't we wait until the final 3 and then we'll call back to this moment in episode 8.
Well, I'm thinking about it. I don't think he should have gone with Jerry and Amber. I mean, I think it was fine, I think either way, Colby's fine. It's not that decision that cost him the game. And I think he would have been fine either way because he had options to win no matter which pair he goes with. It's just his decision at the final 3 that screws him. Keith wins immunity again. We go to Tribal Council. It's 5 votes for Alicia, 4 votes for Jerry. This is the right move.
Yep. Even if you're irritated with Jerry, you gotta take the numbers 5-3. There's no question about that. It doesn't matter who it is. You know, take out the physical threat. You might as well.
Yep.
Right move.
Sucks, but yeah.
That's the game. I think Alicia's 100% the right move here. Best player of the episode, I think, is actually Keith because he has a good bonding session with Roger, which will be good for him later on. He wins immunity, and, you know, the whole tribe gets rid of Alicia, which is the biggest threat. And I don't think there's anything too much to make anybody stand out above the others. I think Keith, Tina, and Colby are all doing a pretty good job bonding with other players or lying to Jerry and Amber. But I'll just give it to Keith because he wins immunity.
So for me, I'm actually going to go by the logic that you've taught me for how you hand out these awards. I say Elizabeth because where you start and where you end. They started a member down, and Elizabeth was the one who found the cracks, and they show this massive bonding session with Tina. It is showing that she's not quitting on the game. It's showing that she's looking for solutions and succeeding, and we'll see that payoff down the road. So I think this is a pivotal episode for who's going to last a while with Kucha, and I think Elizabeth does it. So I give it to Elizabeth.
My one argument against Elizabeth, like, she does do a good job, is that, but she ultimately fails. That's the only thing.
Yeah, but I get Derek's reasoning.
Yep, I do too.
Well, I
think she knows that. I think she knows that they're
Keith
gonna.
doesn't fail here.
What do you mean?
In this episode, Elizabeth does not succeed in her plan to get rid of Jerry. That in this episode, Elizabeth fails.
But she advanced herself.
Yes, yes.
Like her position is better than where it started
Yes.
at the beginning, where she was just a member of Kucha.
I think her general plan was more to kind of have an in with the other tribe, and her main goal, Hail Mary shot, let's vote out Jerry. But I don't think that was her main objective here. I think it was more find those cracks.
It sounds like you're waiting, a successful vote in your best player, and obviously I have no arguments with that. I just enjoy what Elizabeth did.
No, Elizabeth was good in this episode for sure, but I think ultimately it was Keith, but barely. Worst player of the episode, Jerry Manthey. She annoys her tribe like crazy. She picks Amber to go on the reward, and she receives 4 votes.
Yeah, no question.
I have one note: Jerry for irritating everybody. At least she made it through last episode.
So Alicia goes out here, and she's another one who's going to come back and play again. Do you guys want to see Alicia come back?
I'm gonna go with no.
No.
Now, if I remember back to our first episode for this season, where I named off how many players I could remember, she was not one of them. I then looked at the picture of the cast, did not remember her. Maybe I recognized her, but didn't remember her name. She has one famous moment in this entire season, unless I'm forgetting about something, but yeah.
Hey, she will always wave her finger in your face.
Yeah, I guess to give her credit, she does have a very large personality, which is good for TV. Usually not great for Survivor, but there was nothing memorable enough or anything that left me wanting more from her that would make me want to really see her again. I'd rather see someone new come along.
Sure.
This is setting aside the bias that a returning player comes in and, from what I've seen, plays a better, smarter game. Based on her first play, I would be so indifferent about seeing her again. She's not someone who I would be unexcited to see, but if it was a completely new cast member, like Josh said, I wouldn't miss her. She's not anyone that I would think of as to want back, but that being said, knowing that she does come back, I am excited to see that.
I like Alicia personally. I'm fine with her coming back. I think I like her attitude in the game, so I'm fine with it. Episode 9 is the closer look episode, which we're completely skipping. Moving on to episode 10.
No. We need to talk about episode 9.
Who's the best player of the closer look episode?
The worst thing to happen to reality television is recap episodes.
And they've gotten away from those because everybody hates them.
You would think that, but I recently watched The Bachelor.
Oh, no.
I recently watched The Bachelorette, and they had essentially a recap episode.
Oh,
and it was the most
no.
infuriating thing ever because I felt like I wasted an hour of my life.
I'm going to take it a step further and say that any kind of recap episode, whether it's reality TV or a sitcom, are always the worst. They're a waste of my time. I don't care. This is the age of streaming. I don't care if they were necessary back then. I hate them.
Watching it back in the streaming age, I remember being so annoyed with when you stream, you skip these.
Oh, yeah. Because you don't need to watch this, especially if you're binging something. You don't need to watch this kind of stuff. But anyway, let's move on. Episode 10, Honeymoon or Not. And we get a reward challenge off the bat that requires everybody to get partners. They don't have a way for you to pick partners, which is kind of interesting. I kind of missed this. They have to figure out their own way of picking their partners. And Jerry's like, I get Colby. And everybody's like, well, that's not fair. And she goes, Survivor isn't fair.
True.
It's like, really, Jerry? Really? You're going to do this? This is so bad on her part. So they end up drawing names out of hats, but Jerry gets Colby anyway.
Was that organic?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Jerry and Colby end up winning, and they get to go on this trip out to the Great Barrier Reef. And there's actually an interesting story about this, but the whole thing is pretty funny because Jerry's like, oh, it's like a first date, and Colby could not give a crap. But here's where things get interesting. Colby brings back a bunch of pieces of coral for everybody. And this is a great move. He put some thought into it. Each piece means something. It's a really nice social move and like a really nice gesture.
But
this is super illegal.
Yeah. You can't do this.
No. Mark Burnett like apologized for it. But yeah, no, this could have been like a $10,000 fine.
It's very, very illegal.
Extremely illegal.
If you didn't know.
So don't steal coral.
No.
Rule number 1 of Survivor, don't steal coral.
No, don't mess with the Great Barrier Reef. The other thing I like about what Colby does here, he's like, yeah, we're not going to talk any strategy on this reward, okay, Jerry? No strategy talk. It should be a sign that if somebody doesn't want to talk strategy with you, they might be coming for you next.
Surprise.
This is, by the way, their second attempt at making a romantic getaway. You know, they all butt pushed the cots together. It's not going to work. Colby's not having it, and I love it.
This is the closest they've gotten. They had one person who probably would have done it.
Yeah, to be fair, this was a much better chance than season 1.
Sean and Jenna. So we go to immunity, and Nick is next to go in the chopping block. He's the next biggest physical threat, but he managed to win immunity in a showdown against Colby on like tug of war kind of thing.
Surprising.
So Nick saves himself here, and we have a very interesting tribal council because Jerry's going to go home. We're going to get 6 votes for Jerry, 2 votes for Elizabeth. Jerry and Amber both vote for Elizabeth. And this is a god-awful move.
Why?
Because Colby, Keith, and Tina all turn on Jerry. By doing this, they are down to those 3 Kucha. Amber's in the middle. What is to stop Amber from flipping? Amber should flip to Kucha at this point. They could have lost the entire game right here. They could have been the next 3 to go. This is an awful move. Also, you should want to take Jerry to the end, especially Keith. Keith can beat Jerry.
Yeah.
That's the only person left I think he can beat.
Yeah, you should try to get more than just one person ahead from the numbers game.
Yeah, this is a horrible move. They don't do this because they both, Keith loves Roger, Tina loves Elizabeth. They don't want to get rid of them. Tough crap. Like,
get over yourself.
You got to get rid of Roger or Elizabeth.
And I was going to say, Josh, do you have a differing opinion on this?
Oh, I think it was a terrible move.
Okay.
Now, to be fair, I don't know who it should have been, just because to be fair, I don't really remember just kind of like the dynamics of everything, who was really on the bottom of the other tribe. What I was going to ask is, if Nick doesn't win immunity, would this be different?
I think so. I think Nick would go here.
Oh, absolutely. Nick would go home. There's no question. It was established before that challenge. I think they say, yeah, Nick's the next big threat. We need him gone. Which, great move on Colby, making sure that he picks apart everyone who's strong that is left. After this episode, we're going to see Colby win a number of these in a row.
All of them.
It's spoilers, man. We're not there yet.
This is the last time Colby can receive votes in the whole game.
And that's insane. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into worst player of the episode. It's Colby. It's Colby because he knows the right answer. He knows you don't vote Jerry off here. He goes back and forth on camera. We need to make sure we keep the numbers. We have Amber to worry about. He says all these things on camera and votes Jerry anyway. You're telling me you have all that reasoning and you still make the wrong decision? To me, the worst player here is Colby.
That tells me that Tina and Keith outvoted him and he didn't want to rock the boat. I think the worst player is actually Keith. The vote for Jerry is colossal failure on all 3 of their parts, right? It's worse for Keith than Tina because Keith can no longer win the game. Okay? So that puts Keith ahead of Tina. Amber, she made the right move voting for Elizabeth. Like, it's everybody else's fault, not Amber's fault. And then Colby won reward and did the coral thing, which I think boosted his social capital. They all sucked, and it's close, but I think it's got to be Keith.
And my only retort would be, we didn't see him get out-muscled by Keith and Tina, and we only have what we have to go off.
Sure.
I think it has to be Colby as the worst, because he made himself an international outlaw. And that's the only reason.
He's going to have the crocodile hunter coming after him.
Yep.
Rip.
Best player, I think, is actually Nick.
Oh, that is zero question.
Yeah.
He saved himself.
Yeah, winning immunity when you needed to.
It's kind of a cop-out when they win immunity and you give them best player, but you have to.
Yeah, I mean, Elizabeth and Roger are both great too, and all three of them did something to help get this Jerry vote happen, obviously, but I think Nick is the most key factor here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the best thing that happened to Elizabeth and Roger was Jerry.
Yeah.
Nick saved himself, so I think it's Nick.
So as for Jerry, she's going to go out here. She's going to return and play again. It's like, is that 1, 2? That's how many in a row? Kimmy, Michael, Jeff, Alicia, Jerry. That's 5.
Oh, that were
returning
in a row,
in a
too.
row.
I didn't even realize that.
5 in a row. But Jerry's going to come back and play again. You guys up for it?
I am going to say no, just because she annoyed me. Even the 3 episodes that I watched this time around, I remember now, along with the first time watching, I really didn't like her for whatever reason. And it's more just because I was annoyed with her. And not because of the way she played. I mean, annoying is kind of the way she played, but not being a good player or a bad player. Just in general, not really. Don't really want it.
I want to try and be as consistent as I can, but, sometimes when you're giving your opinions, it's flavor of the minute, right? I do want to see her again.
You do?
I do.
Okay.
I do want to see her again, because otherwise you end up with an entire cast of Nick's and Alicia's and Deb's and nobody's. There's always a Jerry to some level, some degree on every season, and you love to hate him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but I think that has more of an impact for a new player. I don't think it has quite the same impact when it's their second or third or fourth or fifth time around.
Sure, but I guess I don't think I'm going to forget Jerry.
No, you don't.
So I think I would be excited to see them come back and expect something different. If they came back again and played the same game and was still annoying, no more for you. So I guess that's my opinion, but I would be excited to see her play again.
I'm stoked to have Jerry come back. I'm obviously she's kind of the villainess here, but I love me a character like Jerry. And we're gonna see more insane versions of Jerry later in the game, but someone who has some understanding of the game in theory, but is lacking in its execution, I think is the best kind of character to have on a season, especially with someone with a dynamic personality like Jerry. So this archetype of character is actually one of my favorites. And not in terms of someone who I root for, but in terms of good TV. You're going to have like your Debbies and your Abby Marias, who are in a similar vein, but more insane. I love it. Give me that. Give me all that. Give me Debbies, give me Abby Marias every single day of the week.
Reem,
yeah,
Reams.
And I would agree with that, but to kind of take it a step further, I think you can have that, but I think that there's more Survivor players that can do that and be a better version of Jerry.
Sure.
I think she's kind of crappy version of that character you're talking
She's
about.
the diet version for sure.
Yeah,
and that's just where we are.
That's why I'm kind of. I know I'm like seesawing here on the decision, but it's more just like there's not really much to be desired on my side.
2 seasons into Survivor, from looking at it through that perspective, absolutely, I want her back. Nowadays, maybe not as much. I think there's better versions of that character out there, but at the time, hell yeah.
Yeah, I guess we did the same thing for Jeff and for Michael.
Yeah.
So to be fair, in that time, I guess I would have said yes.
Okay. Episode 11, let's make a deal. We get the first incarnation of the Survivor auction, which I don't think is super memorable, but it's worth noting. This will be around a lot.
This is, the only thing to mention here is if you go on Survivor and you win a food reward, be careful with what you eat. It honestly isn't worth it.
Yeah, it's good to get some protein, but you're going to mess your system up, so, be careful.
And I think it's fine to eat whatever you want, just it's more the quantity.
Yeah.
You can have the sweetest thing out there. You can have the meatiest thing out there. Just don't have, like, 3 cheeseburgers worth or something, because your stomach can't handle it.
1 or 2 things and call it.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I went to Taco Bell today for the first time in 2 weeks, and my stomach has lost all tolerance. So that happens quickly.
Food is super scarce in this season. This is one of the least amount, not the least amount of food any season's ever had. But
It's a tough one. It's notable. It's notable, tough. And everyone goes fishing but Nick. Granted, he's been sick, but he's also a little lazy. So if everybody's fishing, go fishing.
They'll be the one
Even
person
if you're
who's
not
on.
really trying too hard when you're fishing because you're not feeling great, at least you're there.
Elizabeth and Roger are getting annoyed with Nick. That's not great.
Well, and this is self-awareness. I think I said this is one of the top 3 traits you need in Survivor. And it goes back to what you're saying. If everyone is doing it, do it. If you need food, if the tribe needs food, people need food, you need to be doing something to try and bring food. Or you need to add something, and he's not doing that.
I think Nick is done. I think he wants to leave the game. That's my theory anyway.
I think he's okay with leaving. I don't think anyone wants to leave, but he's okay with it.
Yeah, he's fine. Also notable, the river is rising.
No payoff here.
Foreshadowing.
This is teasing.
We get probably the toughest immunity challenge of the season with a long marathon-esque fire-making challenge. A lot of running back and forth, getting water and sticks to the right place, and Colby ends up winning. And this, Colby will never win immunity again, probably. This is probably a one and done.
One offer.
And is this the one that he was talking about at Final Tribal Council, where this was kind of like his moment because he was like really far behind and then came back to win?
Yes. Yeah, he was in last place getting the fire started. I think he was the last one to get his actual fire going. But he was just able to run quicker than everybody else getting enough water because it was kind of like a seesaw mechanism where you had to fill one end with water to get the fire to raise. To light
Which you do see come back every once in a while, too.
Yeah. So Colby wins. And then we get something interesting. This first time this happened, and we'll see it every once in a while in Survivor, but it's a pretty rare occasion where Jeff comes in to offer them more food because they are out of rice.
And negotiations happen every once in a while, sometimes instigated by Jeff, sometimes instigated by players.
Yep. And so this is the first, and I like this a lot. He offers them enough rice to get them to the rest of the game. In exchange, he wants like all of their tarps and Colby's Texas flag that they were using as shelter. What is the correct move here? Do you take the food or the shelter?
Food. You can build the shelter.
Yep. The flag was a luxury item to start with. They would have been able to survive without it from the beginning. You just have to build the shelter differently this time. And rebuild it right now somewhere else.
Yes. Here's the thing. I'm going to mostly agree with you guys. But if I'm someone who's a little bit more physical and able to handle the less amount of food, maybe Colby. I'm not going to speak for anybody because I don't know how exactly they were feeling. But if you can go without the food, don't take the food. Take the shelter. Here's why. Because if you can handle it and the others can't, it gives you an advantage. So my vote, if I could handle it, who knows if I could. But in an ideal situation, I would say keep the shelter.
This wasn't an episode that I watched, but was it just like a show of hands vote, or like how did this go down?
Everybody wanted the food.
Yes.
Like there was.
It was there was no vote. It was just like everyone, yes, okay, go.
And I was actually going to make that point. They might have put it on TV, but I don't think that there was a choice.
No.
I think Jeff went in, sat him down, and said, "I'm taking your tarps. I'm taking your flag. You get food." Because what happens if they say, "No, we want the shelter," and Jeff goes, "All right, guess you'll die. That's fine."
You'll be fine. You can go 40 days without food. And they've had enough.
And if you faint and get medically evacuated, that's your own damn fault.
But you can't make good TV at that point.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely in the producer's interest to get.
I think you can make good TV off of people making bad decisions and being so ill that they wither away.
Well, that's.
It's just a different kind of TV.
Watching people starving to death is not great TV. So no, I get it. Fine, take the food. It's fine, but something to consider.
It's a really interesting perspective, though. It's one that I didn't really think about. It, the one that you just brought up.
The problem with that being you've now irked the rest of your tribe by not taking the food.
Don't fight if everybody else wants the food.
Yeah, if you're the only one, it's different.
But from what I hear from most survivors, I hear the hardest part about Survivor is the rain. And so if that's true, if I'm going based off that, I'd rather have something to protect me from the rain than food.
I know that I typically do my Jeff watch at the end, but this is the first time that he's a hard ass.
Yeah, puts his foot down.
He plays hardball here.
He's not your friend who sits on the edge with his feet in the water.
No, he sat down in front of him. He's like, "We gave you enough rice to make it to the end. What is your problem?"
Yep, you got screwed up.
So, okay, you know what, Jeff? I like it. I like this Jeff character development. This is great.
So it begins.
So we get to the vote, and Kuchu wants to try and bring Amber to their side, which makes sense. It's a 3-3 split, and Amber's in the middle. So for Amber, should she go with Roger, Nick, and Elizabeth, or should she stick with Keith, Colby, and Tina?
Well, I'll tell you 2 people she can't beat in the finals: Tina and Colby.
I'll give you 2 more people she can't beat in the finals: Roger and Elizabeth.
I think you know, though.
I think and actually, even if it's not beating them in the finals, I think that you have a better chance of beating them in the final immunity challenge. Even if it's not winning, second place is better than third. I don't think you have nearly as good of a chance of beating Colby and Tina.
I think you flip. You take out... I think Amber should flip and take Tina out here. It puts Colby on the bottom. You rope in Keith. If she were able to rope in Keith, that's one person that she can beat in the final two that still remains here.
Yep. I think, honestly, Keith's the only person she can beat left in the game. So what I think Amber needs to do is flip now. I think Amber needs to start flipping back and forth pretty frequently here. And that's asking a lot, because that's never happened before, really, on the show.
Yeah, especially in season 2.
Yeah, but I think that's the only... Amber needs to break up that Ogre Core 4, because she's on the bottom. She needs to knock one of them out. And maybe flip back and stick with Keith and Colby for a while. So I think Amber does make the wrong move here by sticking with Ogre Core. And I think she's going to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's going to end up happening is we're going to get the 4 votes for Nick from Ogre Core. Roger and Elizabeth vote for Amber. So I'm guessing Amber must have said, like, yeah, I'm not going to vote with you guys. Like, all right, screw you, we're going to vote for you. Nothing else is going to happen. And then Nick gets annoyed with Keith. Because Keith does not bring his bag to Tribal Council because he thinks he's safe. And Nick sees that as arrogant. Nick votes for Keith. Just bring your stuff to Tribal Council. Just bring it all. Even if you know you're not going home. Unless you have immunity, just bring it all.
And this is something that's not even an issue anymore, basically, in Modern Survivor.
Yeah, especially because there's immunity idols and stuff these days.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Keith wasn't going anywhere, but still, it's not a great look. So, Nick's the correct vote, obviously. But biggest the physical threat, I think.
Mm-hmm.
For your Tina, Colby, and Keith, this is the right move.
But I think the person who should have gone home here is Tina. I think that's the correct... Overall, the correct move is Tina. Best player of the episode, Colby. Winning immunity, getting Amber back on their side, and getting rid of Nick.
I have no disagreements.
Can you say that they got Amber back on their side? Or?
Yeah, generally from what I've heard, it's Colby and Amber are pretty close, and I think they talk about that a little bit in the finale. Amber does vote for Colby. So Colby and Amber were closer than anybody else. I think if anybody did it, it's Colby.
Okay.
And even if they weren't close, the votes spoke to where those lines had been drawn.
They did something to reassure her.
Yeah. Worst, I'm gonna say Roger for voting for Amber.
No,
it can't be Nick because again, Nick went home, but
it's Amber. She received votes and she stuck with Ogre Core when she shouldn't have.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. I think I didn't consider that. It's Amber.
I don't even care that she received votes.
Yeah,
it's more just take your shot.
You're trying to win a game here. Episode 12, no longer just a game. Colby wins reward, and he gets a night away from camp, hanging out with cowboys. He gets to drink a beer with Jeff. Colby fits in great on this reward challenge. I love it.
Second season in a row that someone gets a beer with Jeff.
Yeah, lucky.
He just gets to be a cowboy.
Yeehaw.
Unfortunately, for everybody else, a flood has come through and washed away their fishing hooks and their rice and some other stuff. The dry creek bed is no longer dry.
Shocker.
I've heard that this is one of the most iconic episodes of Survivor of all time. I really felt the emotions here. You could feel just that desolate, downtrodden, somber psyche. They were done.
Well, because they had just given away their cover.
And their rice is gone now.
Yeah.
This is probably my favorite episode of the season. Definitely top 2. This and the Mitchell boot are my 2 favorites. This is the one episode I was talking about earlier that is just amazing in terms of the survival stuff.
And I think I mentioned in our first episode of this season that my personal most memorable moment of this season is Michael falling in the fire. I still stand by that. That's still, I think, the number 1 most memorable moment. This is a very close second.
Yeah. I agree completely.
We're lucky to get one of these moments in a season of Survivor, and we have two of these moments.
Yeah, this is brutal and just devastating. And you like these people so much, you just feel awful for them.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get something really cool. Tina and Keith go for a walk down the river to see if they can find anything, and they spot the rice trapped up against a log out in the middle of the river. Somehow. And they brave the floodwaters and manage to get it back. They save the rice.
So, skeptic in me, is this organic?
I think so, because I don't know if the producers were thrilled about them braving floodwaters. A lot could have gone wrong there.
Yeah, a lot could have gone wrong.
Yeah, I do think this was organic.
But this is also the season where cliff diving was on the menu.
That's true. That is true. That's a fair point. Either way, I'm fine with it because they had to do something to get their food back.
Yeah, I mean, even if it was like a setup by the producer and be like, hey, just so you know, your rice is on the other side of the creek if you want to go over there and try to find it. They already were in desperation mode and gave them food in exchange for their shelter.
Yeah.
They have nothing to trade anymore.
Yeah.
So maybe just say like, oh, we'll give you food if you cross this creek.
And again, let's say they did plant it. The mood at that camp was so bad, they needed a win.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't even care if it was organic. I felt it all the same.
It's an iconic TV moment. It's really cool just from a filming perspective. It gives us a great moment for Tina and Keith. I'm totally... If this was staged, or at least not staged, I don't want to say staged, but like set up, like, you know, then let's put the rice there. They can get it back.
Because them crossing the river, that wasn't staged. Like,
No,
they
did
did
that.
that on their own.
And
that water will be cold, folks.
Yeah, it's not the safest thing in the world, and you make a good point with the cliff diving. I love it. I love this.
Yeah.
This is so cool. Colby comes back to camp and just like, oh crap, you guys went through some stuff.
Well, and I feel badly for the rest of the tribe, but I feel badly for Colby too, because you're gonna want to come back and at least talk about it a little bit, and he just like, oh man, what did I miss?
Yeah,
like,
you got guilt now.
Like,
Yep.
what happened? And you know, there's a really sweet moment between him and Tina, who Tina felt this, I think, worse than anyone, because I mean, she's been so stalwart and so strong, and then just this came out of nowhere. She's like, I can handle the people, but like this, especially when she didn't want to necessarily build it on the beach either.
Yeah, it was Jerry.
And you know, as we all know, Jerry and Tina didn't get on well. Colby is like, what happened? How can I help? And Tina just looks at him and says, oh, it's fine. How was your reward? And can I just say again, Tina, your social game is on point. You're doing everything to ask other people. It's not about you. You're a listener. You're a caretaker. You are a genius, even if this is just who you are. This is a great human moment, and I'll keep saying it. These early seasons keep delivering on these human moments,
Absolutely.
and I want more.
I think the most unfortunate part of this entire sequence is that Jerry wasn't here
Yeah.
because it was her fault.
Yep.
That would have been great
And
TV.
I want her to pay for it, but she
And-
didn't pay for it. Everyone else did.
At Tribal Council, Roger kind of throws a little bit of shade at her. It's like, it wasn't my idea. I can't remember exactly whose idea it was to put it in the dry creek bed, but it wasn't mine.
He kind of throws out all women
Yeah.
at that one. He's like, I think the girls, you know, thought the sand would be better for sleeping and such like that. And I'm just like, okay, but we saw Jerry and Amber, mostly Jerry.
Colby wins immunity, again, Tribal Council. And Tina does a really good politicking at Tribal Council, I do want to say. This is probably like the best politicking stuff I've seen from this season. We saw some really good stuff last season from like Richard and Sue at Tribal Council, but Tina is very good here with how she answers their questions. But it ends up being 4 votes for Amber, 2 votes for Roger. Why Amber? Why Amber go here? I mean, clearly I think it's because Roger and Elizabeth have such good social games.
I think it's just season 2 Survivor. Even though strategy is becoming, it is much, much, much better than season 1. They kind of said it like later on in the season. I think it was in the finale. It was more, they just liked them, and
Yeah.
it was either they liked them or they felt bad for them. They didn't really they wanted them to go further, even if it wasn't the best strategic move. It's just something that they wanted to do. Not a great move, but it's, like I said, season 2 Survivor kind of showing its true colors.
I'm having trouble remembering who the 4th vote is.
Okay, so Roger, Elizabeth, Tina, and Keith all vote for Amber. Colby and Amber vote for Roger. And that's because Colby and Amber were closer than I think we were showing on TV. So Colby just probably was like, yeah, I'm not going to vote for Amber. That would be my guess. And I think that would be part of the reason Amber votes for Colby in the finals. So yeah, Colby does not go along with the group here. I honestly think this is a mistake. I think you bring Amber with you because she's less of a threat than Elizabeth or Roger. Take your pick. Get rid of either of them.
You know, I'm going to say that I'm okay with the move. It's not the best if you look at the edit, but if Colby and Amber are as close as you think they are, Tina doesn't want her around. That puts her at number 2 with the biggest physical threat in the game. And if he can win all the way to the end, you know, shot in a million that'll happen, you need to be the number 1 choice. So You need to get rid of her eventually. I guess why not here? Maybe you use it as a test to see how much you can trust Elizabeth and Roger. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense considering the numbers will be 3-2 at that point. But I guess I'm okay with it. They still have margin for error here because Keith isn't going anywhere.
Ultimately, I think Tina is the best player of this episode because she does save the rice. She does a great job at tribal council. She's on the right side of the votes. Losing Amber is not an issue really for her game. So I think Tina is the best player of this episode.
I agree. I think a close second would be Colby, just for winning reward and not having to go through literal hell.
Yeah.
But
I think the only reason it can't be Colby is because he didn't vote with.
Yeah.
Or vote for who ended up going home.
That's the big one.
I think it's ultimately fine for him because I think that will win him a jury vote by not doing that.
True. Maybe he's looking ahead that far.
Yeah, and I think he is. Worst is Keith because the only person he has any fighting chance against, or he might win a couple of votes over, is Amber.
And this is basically the end for him.
Yeah, he's going to lose 7-0 no matter who he goes against at this point. That's the only person he had any chance of getting a vote against in the end.
You might be able to get like one vote if you went up against like a Roger, just because you might be able to persuade someone to think that like he just had a better strategy game.
I don't think so. I think if Keith and Amber go to the end, I think he could probably get like Tina's vote. I think anybody else, he loses 7-0.
Which he probably didn't really have much of a chance anyways.
Yeah, I think he still would have lost to Amber, but,
It's closest
it
bet.
wouldn't have been as embarrassing.
Yep.
Amber Burkich is going to play again. You guys want to see Amber come back?
Put myself in the lens of season 2, I would have been very indifferent. If you perform differently, maybe. If you try to be more memorable, sure. Nothing from what I saw would have made me actually be super interested in her coming back. Kind of the same thing as I said before. I would have rather had just a new player, get new personality in there.
I'm gonna really dig into the semantics of your question. Are you excited to see Amber play again? No. I mean, I'll give anyone a chance to be a returning player. I'm not so close-minded that I don't want someone. It would take, modern knowledge Michael Skupin or Jeff Varner. We don't need them anymore. But I wouldn't be excited to see a return. We got a little bit more personality from her in the reunion show as to why she was so vanilla. She didn't want to show her emotion because that would give away her game. I get that that's the game that you're playing. It doesn't make good TV, and no.
At the time, for the first 2 seasons, at time of play, if I was to rank all 32 players from who I wanted to return the most to least wanted to return, Amber is last on that list.
I don't know how you can ever last.
I think she's the most boring of all 32 contestants and the least interesting by far. I don't give a flying crap about Amber, and I have no interest in seeing her play again.
I mean, I guess if you're talking about interesting, even someone because I wouldn't put like a Deb.
I'd rather see Deb play again than
Amber. I don't think I would.
I would much rather see Deb play again than Amber. There's nothing to Amber. I don't care at all.
I wouldn't want Kel.
Kel's second to last. Kel's second to last, and the only reason I want to see him play again, and I don't want to see him play again, is because at least he had the beef jerky incident. There's nothing.
Wasn't
memorable
even
about
because
Amber.
of him.
Yeah,
instigated by someone else.
So yeah, I don't want to see Amber come back.
I don't want to spend more time on this than we need to,
That's
but
fine.
I think just based on how far she made it in the game, I would be more excited to see low bar. I would be more excited to see Amber return than a Kel, than a Mitchell, than a BB, than Ramona.
I'd rather see a train wreck or somebody who got sick or just had bad luck early on than somebody who made it so far in the game and failed to leave an impression. That's a severe damnation.
But that's why I'm saying the people who are below her for me are those same pretty vanilla people that just left earlier, so I got less of them. I know less about them. I have less of a stake in them. But again, like I said, that's a pretty low bar to clear.
Episode 13, Enough is Enough. We start with the loved one chat rooms. We're not too much interest here, but a couple of things. Keith proposes to his girlfriend, awkwardly. And we get the first appearance of future Survivor contestant Katie Collins here, the daughter of Tina. Because Tina's going to come back on Survivor Blood vs. Water.
Had no idea.
Katie plays on that season, and we get to see her here for the first time, which is kind of funny.
Ryan keeps making fun of me because I am just gushing over Tina's gameplay. After every episode, I turn to Ryan and talk about how much I love what Tina is doing in the game she's playing and what she's able to accomplish. And he's like, dude, you've seen her before. I'm like, what? What?
He had no
When?
idea that Tina played on Survivor Blood versus Water. Completely forgot she was on that season. So Derek's gushing, fanboying over Tina. Has no idea that he's already seen her play.
Yeah.
Very
I
funny.
completely forgot about the whole blood versus water thing until you mentioned it, and now looking at image search of Katie, I do remember her from Blood versus Water.
You'll be forgiven for forgetting her because she's not very memorable on Blood versus Water. Katie isn't. But yeah, that is the first time we see Katie. So at camp, Colby blows up at Keith for cooking too much rice. And I think the game's getting to both of them. So Keith is, screwing up, cooking again. Colby blows up at him. You got to let this go, Colby. Just let it.
And it's not a huge deal just because there's not that many people left, so it's not something that you could use, like a group of people can use against you.
Sure.
In this scenario, but still not good to do in general, especially if you think you're going to be in the final and might try to get Keith's vote.
Keith is going to vote for Tina. Tina wins 4-3.
And there might be a lot of stuff that leads to it, but
Sure. But this didn't help.
nope. Try to do as much as you can. Jury management
Be
starts
nice.
at the merge.
Be nice. Let Keith screw up. Don't say anything.
Yep, I always seem to bring this up, but hindsight's 20/20. Don't blow up at someone, but if you do, you need to simmer down and mend fences quickly. And I think Colby does do that quickly enough. It doesn't extend too far beyond this episode.
Oh, I don't think he mends the fences, though. I think he just leaves it alone and just kind of lets it go, but he doesn't mend the fences. And, this wouldn't have mattered if, he'd brought a certain someone to the end. If you're going to blow up at someone, make sure it's the person you have sitting next to you.
True.
Colby wins immunity because Keith drops a lock during the challenge. Again, Colby, third time in a row, has got immunity.
Wait, Colby won immunity again?
Oh, my God.
Chance in a million.
And so this is interesting because Roger asks the others to vote him out over Elizabeth. And I think Elizabeth's overall a better player and a bigger threat than Roger. Barely, but I think it is the case. And I think Elizabeth is the smartest person to vote out here. But Roger's just like, I'm an old man. I don't need the money as much. Vote me out. At least give Elizabeth that chance. And they do. And it's 3 votes Roger, 2 votes Keith. And Roger goes out here. It's really a sweet moment. And
It's a sweet moment. Not a great move.
No.
But I will say I think it's okay to make this move because it's not going to matter in the end.
yeah, it wins over Roger as a person for me. I think he's the most wholesome person ever on Survivor. I love Roger, and he just seems like a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
Not a great gameplay here. You don't want to tank your own game for somebody, but this is a really nice moment. But terrible gameplay.
And the hard part is we only get a small part of this. We don't know what conversation led to this. We know that he was talking to Tina about it. I can see Tina just being very frank and saying, hey, it's us 3. I know you're going to play your game, but if we have to pick, who's it going to be? I get it. Roger, he's just pure wholesome. He oozes that genuine feeling that you are in company of a good person. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. I don't think Roger is the correct move here. It's ultimately fine.
It's fine. It's a game of inches again, and I have no real issue with voting out Roger or Elizabeth. Either one. They're number 1 and 2 in winning the game right now. Gotta get rid of both of them, so ultimately I don't think it's a big deal. Elizabeth certainly doesn't need the money anymore.
No.
She's probably, honestly, the wealthiest survivor.
Good for her.
So, yeah, 3 votes Roger, 2 votes Keith because he's kind of arrogant, but I think this is the right move.
And Roger doesn't play again, does he?
Nope. Best player, I think, is Elizabeth because she had such a great relationship with Roger that he tanked his own game for her.
Woo! And I mean, that's not just episode specific. That's
Sure.
the entire game, but
It comes into play.
You get
here.
it.
I want to
Yeah.
give credit for forming that bond here.
I'll agree just because Elizabeth gets to go 3 more days and Tina, Colby, and Keith are staying the course.
Yeah.
They are in the exact same position at the end of the episode as they were at the beginning.
They had
except one more Kucha member down.
they had the easiest decision, so...
Yep. Worst player is Keith because he annoyed Colby and Elizabeth by overcooking the rice, and he received more votes from Elizabeth and Roger.
And still has no chance of winning.
Yep.
Keith is just a vote at this point.
Keith is a goat.
Oh, goat. I said vote, but sure.
A goat and a vote.
Both.
A goat with a vote.
Ooh.
Episode 14, the final 4. So we have Tina bonding with Elizabeth some more, which I think is important because this is going to help Tina win the game. She's going to get Elizabeth's vote. We have the first car prize reward challenge. So Colby ends up winning the car, and it turns out it's a surprise loved ones visit. We get to meet Colby's mom. Surprise! Not too much here. And then he goes on to win a memory-based immunity challenge. So Colby's just on a roll here.
Wait, another immunity.
And so I don't know how actually significant this is, but brings her back to camp as well.
Yes.
And this is more just kind of talking it through, but are you able to kind of say, I don't want you to come
No.
back?
No.
Okay.
Producer
Because
like
I feel like that'd be kind of, if you do have the choice, I feel like you'd say like, love you, would love to spend time with you, but everyone's going to kind of hate me.
Oh, I've told my dad. My dad's a huge Survivor fan. I told him he'd be my loved one, so he'd come out onto the island. I think it'd be really cool. But I'm like, Dad, we're throwing the challenge. If you and I are playing, we are throwing it. If we get picked to go, great, fine. But we're not winning this thing.
Yeah.
It's a terrible move. But Colby didn't know it was a loved one's visit.
Hey, Josh, this is a good time for you to tell the world who your loved one pick would be.
Oh, yes. So my lifelong dream is to go on Survivor, because that is Ryan's lifelong dream. And I just want to go on Survivor so that I can make it far enough to make it to the loved one's visit and bring Ryan as my loved one so I can rub it in his face that I'm on Survivor and he is not.
You never told me that before. I didn't know that was your plan.
He's told you that every single season that we've watched Survivor.
I maybe not have gone into that much detail with
No.
it.
I think you made a passing comment about joking about it, or maybe I blocked this from my memory because it's so upsetting to me, this idea that Josh gets on Survivor and brings me to rub it in.
Well, and he's gone so far as to say, we'll go in for the hug, and I'll whisper in your ear, how does it feel?
Jeff is right over there. I get to see him all the time.
I will tank your game so hard. Like, guys, don't trust this guy.
This guy sucks.
Do not let him win.
But all we have to do is have great enough personality so that we get put on Blood versus Water 3.
Oh, yes. I'll immediately vote you out.
I would never trust you in Blood versus Water.
Never. Dude, that'd be, like, brilliant. Get people who would totally vote each other out in Blood versus Water.
I hate this guy. But I love him.
It's my roommate. I want him to lose.
I want him to lose because it'd be funny.
That'd be great. So there's really not much that happens in this episode. So let's just go to Tribal Council. It ends up being 3 votes Elizabeth, 1 vote Keith. In Keith's defense, he's toned down his arrogance. Elizabeth says, like, yeah, you toned down your arrogance, which I appreciate, but I'm just voting for you because why not? Yeah, Elizabeth's the clear choice here.
Yep, no question.
Best player is Colby for winning immunity and getting rid of Elizabeth.
By default.
Worst player is none. I don't have a worst player. I think everybody did very well.
Keith still can't win.
Keith still can't win, but he improved his standing in the game.
And nobody played poorly.
Keith went from last to still last.
Still last, but, not as horrible as he was.
Sure.
He still loses 07.
Sure. All right, now we're at the finale. Episode 15, The Most Deserving. This is the most boring episode of Survivor. Almost nothing happens. We get a lot of fallen comrades, yada, yada, yada. Finally, we get to the trivia about contestants who've gone home already. And it's close, but Colby ends up winning.
I didn't see this coming, by the way. I thought Tina was gonna win this challenge. I had made a prediction at the beginning of the episode that Colby would win immunity again and would bring Tina to the finals, and then I saw what the challenge was, and I was like, oh, Tina's gonna win, and she's gonna bring Colby because the name of the episode is The Most Deserving. The title kind of gave me some spoilers at the beginning, admittedly, here.
So Colby wins this challenge and votes out Keith.
Now, this is what you call $1 million mistake.
This is one of the single worst moves in Survivor, period. This is horrendously bad. Colby loses the game here.
We see multiple times throughout Survivor, like someone keeps one player over the other because of their morals or because they just like the person better. They want one person to do better than the other and isn't completely motivated by strategy. So do we know what his exact motivation was behind this?
I think Colby just wanted to be America's sweetheart, kind of, the good old boy. And if he votes out Tina, I think he feels he will be a villain. And he doesn't want to be a villain. He wants to turn this into a movie career and be in a movie called Red Eye.
Which I can see.
And
I
go
can
and
see that in
host
season 2.
Top Shot. Go and be the host of Top Shot.
Woo.
It works out for him. It definitely pays off for him. But yeah, to win Survivor, this is just horrendously bad.
Yeah, wrong move.
Now, Colby's motivations, I don't think he cares if he or Tina wins. I think Colby's a good guy and does not care if it's him or Tina, which is perfectly fine with Tina winning. But that's not what we're judging. We're judging gameplay. And this is horrendous. And it earns him worst player of the episode for sure.
And I don't think there's really much of a discussion on that.
You make the worst move in the season, you get worst player of the episode. Them's the rules.
I know that I brought up earlier that the Jeff Varner jump was the worst move in the season, and we held off on it just because we wanted to wait until now. But just to call back to that, the only reason why I said that about Jeff is that would have changed the entire outlook of the game.
It's
yes,
true.
This has more really like short-term magnitude for Colby and for the end result, but the Jeff one as well. I think it's like 1A and 1B, just because the Jeff one would have changed everything.
That's
We would have had a different winner.
But here's the difference. Colby, there's two choices. Colby wins the game, Colby loses the game.
Yep.
Period. Jeff, if he hadn't done that, there's no guarantee he would have won the game. So it's not necessarily $1 million mistake, where this is $1 million mistake.
Yeah, there's a lot more variables that would come into play for whatever would happen after Jeff possibly wins immunity. So I completely get, just for my own perspective, I think that was a huge mistake, and either 1A, 1B, or very, very, very close behind.
They're both horrendous. Best player is Tina for getting Colby, for having a good enough relationship with Colby for him to vote out Keith instead. So
yeah, default.
all right, so let's cut to the final Tribal Council, because nothing after the middle stuff doesn't matter. This is interesting. So Tina's basically, her thing is she wants people to ignore their hurt feelings and just focus on the gameplay. And then Colby gives like an anti-speech, and he's like, I don't know if I'm better than Tina. He doesn't even fight for it at all, really. He kind of like just keels over and dies.
I shouted at the television in frustration because I'm not going to say that Colby could have won this game with a better showing at Final Tribal Council, but I guess we'll never know. You're exactly right. He keeled over. I don't know if I'm better than Tina. Yes, you do. You can absolutely make an argument that you were better. In Modern Survivor, Colby wins.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that.
I strongly disagree. I think Tina still wins.
I think it's close to the same result, like vote-wise.
I'll walk it back just a little bit and say it's still going to be a toss-up. I mean, this vote ends up being 4-3.
Yeah.
In Modern Survivor, it's all about resume. It's all about big moves. Colby is the one who drew the votes. Colby is the one who won 5 straight immunities. Colby's the one who won a ton of rewards. Colby is the one who had been on the ailing Ogakor and taken advantage of those opportunities. If you look at a big moves resume, depending on your jury, I think Colby beats Tina. The fact is that a modern jury is going to be more intelligent to recognize the prowess in a successful UTR game, a great social game, and those personal bonds that Tina has made. So it's still going to be close. I think Tina should have won 7-0, but Tina, I must say, it is my favorite player who I've ever watched. I am obsessed with how she played this game. I think she loses to a Colby.
If it's a final 3, we have the two of them and Keith in, and Colby doesn't make that horrendously bad move, I think Colby does win. But if we have a modern day final 2 for whatever reason, I think Tina beats him, because that's just such a horrific move.
I think a lot of people would look past that and just look at the entire game. I think with a better showing at Tribal Council, Colby should have won this.
Colby could have won this.
Because I don't think it would have taken a lot to persuade a lot of people. I don't think strategy is looked at that significantly. And now I'm going back to just Season 2 here and not like looking modern or anything. I don't think strategy is looked at as being that significant quite yet. And if you toss in the immunity challenges, if you toss in the way that he voted, and I know we talked about at the merge episode how he tried to influence the vote a little bit on that. If you just kind of like talk through all this stuff about what you have done and not just just sitting there, just kind of doing your own thing, like just kind of half-ass answers, I think you can schmooze a little bit. Neither of them really did a good job here. I don't think either of them did a good job. Tina
is better, but it's not
I don't think so.
Tina's better. She doesn't keel over and die.
Okay, yes. She is better by default, but I don't think she did a good job at all. There were plenty of opportunities for both of them to address people directly that neither of them did.
Yep. And honestly, there isn't a lot. There's only 3 of the 7 jury members are worth talking about here, because a lot of the questions are like dumb. So let's get into those. I think there's 3 worth talking about. Now, Elizabeth asks, out of the 7 jury members, pick 2. Everybody gets $1 million except 2. Which 2 don't? Great question. Tina picks Jerry and Roger. I like, obviously the Jerry pick's great. I wonder if she just assumes, I think what the move here is pick the person you hate, and then pick somebody who's a lock for Colby, and she must assume Roger's a lock. I think that's the move. Pick the 2 votes you're not going to get, or least likely to get.
It's the right move.
Colby picks Jerry and Keith. Also, I think the right move. But I think both of these are fine answers. If you have to answer this question, I think this is fine, because Keith's voting for Tina.
Yeah. I have no argument. I think you're correct. I think there's multiple answers to that question. This one works.
Yep.
There's no way to win the question, but there is certainly a way to lose it.
Yep. And I love that they both picked Jerry. It's
very satisfying.
So good. Nick wants to know, if Michael had not fallen in the fire, who would be in the final 2? And I don't think either of them do very well here.
I don't think, they're very wrong.
Colby starts off fine, and he says Nick. Okay, great. Brown knows Nick a little bit. That's fine. But then he says Michael. Michael's not in the game anymore. He's not on the jury. Don't get that out of here.
And so to kind of meet him halfway on this, I think he did this is okay just because of how he perceived that tribe being that they were very close and that really hurt them, and it fed into their ego a little bit because he directly says, if it wasn't for that, none of the people at the end would be here because you guys would have just taken us out.
Yep.
So I think it does kind of like stroke the ego of more than just one person, like you would just singling one person out. So I think this is okay.
I think here's the best answer you can give. Say, yeah, you guys would have taken us out. Then I would imagine Michael and Jeff were threats. You take them out. And this doesn't have to be true. But then I would say something along the lines of, I don't think you would let Roger or Elizabeth get to the end because I love Roger and Elizabeth. So I think it'd be you and Alicia. I think you guys would be the ones to scheme and plot your way to the end. And you two would be the final two. They're both on the jury. There's some logic to it. And you're complimenting everybody a little bit. So I think that's the correct answer. Thoughts?
I like that idea. You've certainly had a lot of time to think about this.
Years
to think about it. I think I side more with Josh that this is a fine enough answer, but I will say I agree with Ryan if you can compliment someone who is there to hear you. The only reason I say it's okay, it's a little different from Josh's, is that the Michael thing was pretty traumatic.
Yeah.
So it's almost like paying some sort of homage to that. Like, this was a horrible thing. I think Tina also started the answer outright by saying, I don't know.
I think that's terrible because you're kind of copping out. Nick's going to vote for Colby, and I imagine this didn't help. She doesn't answer his question.
It was an honest answer, though. It's how, unfortunately, if I was in a social conversation, it's how I would answer. I'd say, we can't rewind the clock. Let's not even do this. It's a fun thought exercise for TV, but I hate questions like this.
Well, and I think you also have to be careful because, and Colby started by saying this, he said, and this is going to sound like schmoozing, but I think you do have to be careful about appearing to be disingenuous.
Yeah, that's true.
Because if you pick two people who very obviously should not have won just because you're trying to win their votes, then everyone's going to kind of see it and be like, okay, yeah, he's just sucking up to these people.
But I like how he does admit, this might sound a little bit like schmoozing. I think that, brings it down a little bit.
Yeah, it's a good intro.
But I think there is a logic to saying, yeah, Nick could easily be in the final two. I think Nick had a pretty solid chance of making it to the final two if Michael doesn't fall in the fire.
Or if he wasn't lazy. And
that might be a reason to bring him to the final two because he is lazy. But Tina says Michael and refuses to answer a second person. That's terrible.
It's just a wasted opportunity.
This is win Nick's vote here.
Win someone's vote. It doesn't have to be Nick's.
Sure. Say Alicia and I don't know Elizabeth or Elizabeth and Roger. I don't know. I don't care.
Who cares?
But this is not a good answer.
In summary, find a way to compliment people's games.
Yep.
Acknowledge.
Yep.
Show that you're paying attention and that you cared.
Yep.
There you go.
And the final person I want to talk about is Jerry, who wants to know if any of them feel guilty about what they've done. And this is so funny. This is the best part of the episode. Tina brings up the Kel incident. She doesn't name Jerry. She's like, yeah, somebody asked me to search his bag for the beef jerky. Don't remember who, but I really wish I hadn't been standing there and I hadn't been the one who asked. I have some regrets about that. It was Jerry who asked her.
Shade.
And Colby just doubles up on it because he's like, yeah, I feel guilty about voting out Alicia and Roger and Elizabeth, but I got no other regrets.
Okay, so as satisfying as that was, is this a missed opportunity?
It depends. Did they go in guns blazing screw Jerry? Which I think that definitely could be the case, and I would love them so much if that's true. I don't know. If that isn't the case, yeah, you want to win her over, but Jerry, I think, would see through your schmoozing and your BS pretty well. So this one's tough because I think there is something to be said for your mortal enemy on the jury. Throw them under the bus, and there'll be enough people, I think, on the jury who will appreciate that, especially if it's someone who's hated like Jerry.
And she probably had already made, her decision wasn't changing.
Yeah.
She doesn't seem like the type of person who would change her decision based on one question.
And I think when you get this question, there's only one answer, in my opinion. Own your game. You don't apologize for anything. You can talk about things that bother you as a person if you want to color yourself as a more ethical person. Because, you're out there, you're playing a game, you're manipulating. Colby has the perfect answer. He's like, I feel guilty about a lot of things. I feel guilty that we voted out Alicia for basically no reason. Yep. But I have no regrets. It got me here.
I do think Colby gives a strong answer here. I think this is probably his strongest answer.
I think that's the only answer you can ever give this question. And I still love that it gets asked because I want to hear people own their game. That's part of Survivor, is saying, this isn't real life. I need to do what I need to do to get here. And I love that seasonal acknowledgement. We always get something like this coming up where they get an opportunity to own their game. Tina doesn't do that as well as Colby does here.
Nope.
Tina doesn't disown her game. She says, hurt feelings, don't let that get in the way here. That's her acknowledging her game in a roundabout way. I like Colby's. I have guilt, I don't have regrets.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like,
So-
I feel bad about it, but I would do it again.
Yeah.
That's great. I think that's a great answer because he acknowledges you have emotions. You're not a complete robot, but you own your game. I think that's a win-win.
Yep.
I see this as an absolute win.
And also, Jerry had shade thrown at her.
Yes, it was great. So finally we get to the final words, and Colby just refuses to say anything. I don't even, like, what are you doing, Colby?
Literally, just anything. Just even if it's just thanks for all the questions. I hope you guys make the right decision.
Yeah, it's easy. Whatever. Tina's just like, yeah, this is all about strategy. It wasn't personal. So Tina ends up winning 4-3. Was she the right choice? Derek.
Yeah, 7-0. She should have been the right choice. Now, I know that I am on the far end of extremes here. A UTR player is my favorite player. She wasn't that UTR at the end, but you can't be. I love her game. Top to bottom, beginning to end, I think she plays nearly flawless Survivor. She's my favorite player. In terms of gameplay, she's the favorite game that I've seen from beginning to end. Maybe not my favorite player personality-wise. We don't get a
Favorite
ton
character and player.
Yeah. Let's draw the line like that. I like that. So she's my favorite player so far. Not favorite character, but my oh my, I cannot say enough good things. This is absolutely the right choice.
And just to clarify for people who don't know, Derek has said it a couple of times, but UTR, under the radar.
Yes.
I don't think that was clarified at all.
In case it wasn't under the radar.
Yep.
Josh?
I don't think so.
Wow. Okay.
And that's absolutely nothing against Tina. I really, really, really like Tina. The first time I watched this season, I felt robbed. I thought that Colby should have won. I didn't feel that this time around. Now, granted, I watched 3 episodes from the season, like I'm going to for every one of these rewatches. I think they were very equal in different ways. I think the only thing that Tina had more than Colby was the strategic game. I think Colby did better in the other 2 parts of the game, though, the social side and the outplaying. I will say they were both very strong in all 3 aspects of the game. And like I said, very, very, very close. Tina just slightly ahead in the strategic side. I think they are about tied in the social side, but I think Colby is a lot better in the outplay.
Sure.
It's a very tough decision, but I think I would just barely nudge it towards Colby.
I'm going to side with Derek, and I think Tina should have won because I do think she's the better strategic player. Well, Colby is the better physical player. I think Tina does play the better social game because Colby has those blow-ups with like Keith and Jerry, and Tina bottles it all up and plays nice better. And she wins Jerry's vote. She wins Keith's vote. You know, she gets it on with them too. I just think Tina was overall better to play nice with people than Colby was, and I think that is what ultimately edges it out for me. So I in this position I would have voted for Tina.
And you know what? There's always something to be said for someone who makes it to the end with 0 votes.
Yes.
The fact that you were an under the radar UTR player and you stayed that way the whole time. I love Tina's game.
I think there are 2 very different social games, and so I don't think you can put one ahead of the other.
I do. One ahead of the other. Anyway, let's move on. Reunion show. I think it's worth watching for Bryant Gumbel alone, but I think it's a pretty good reunion show.
The very little that we get of him in Survivor history, might as well.
He's amazing. So I think this is a solid reunion show. So let's wrap up this season. Best player this season is Tina.
I agree. There's no question.
By default.
No, I don't even think by default. I think she is truly the best player this season.
Well, default as in like she won. So
and even regardless, even if you go on the theory that the best player doesn't always win, let's go off that for a minute. I still think Tina is the best player overall, especially because Colby made such a horrendous move at the final 3.
True.
If Colby makes the right move there, he deserves to win, but he doesn't. But yeah, I think Tina is the best player this season overall. Worst player is Jerry, and we're just gonna talk worst player from the merge on, because it's hard to compare people who are pre-merge to post-merge. I think overall Jerry does the worst job. She's not like a complete zero. She's got some understanding of the game and the right attitude coming in, but she doesn't win any immunity challenges. She's got a terrible social game. Some strategic traps, but not enough. There's some severe holes in her strategic game, and I think it's Jerry's the worst player of the season. Keith is a close second, but Keith at least has some willpower, and that might be about it.
Self-control.
He's got some self-control. So Keith is second worst, but I think Jerry is ultimately worse than Keith.
So it's going to be a tough argument to make, but I think there is an argument for Jeff.
Ooh.
Just because it was very, very short-lived. If we're just looking at people from the merge on, I mean, I think I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember what I said, but I think I said that Jeff was the best player out of the first half, the pre-merge. But one move into the post-merge, he makes one bad decision that affects the rest of his game because it didn't last much longer.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot more unique things that happened for someone like Jerry or Keith that would make him a worse player, but one big mistake is still a mistake.
I think you could still be a decent Survivor player even if you make one big bad move. Mistakes happen. It's how you react to them. But Jeff, there wasn't enough he could do. And I think he is pretty good for the rest of his time.
Mm-hmm. I think my argument is that you can put him in second. I think he's a very solid second behind Jerry.
Well, let's move on to Jeff Watch.
Yeah, so, Jeff comes into his own a little bit more. He's more comfortable in the role. He's better at managing tribal council. We got to see Mean Jeff come out and play a little bit with the rice. I think Jeff made a tangible and noticeable shift from season 1 to season 2. Like, he knew what was going on, and he was a little more ready for it. There's still unpredictability, but he's coming into his own. I'm excited to see what Jeff looks like going forward. I want to see how long it takes to get to modern Jeff, because Jeff really hasn't changed for the last 6-7 years. So I'm excited to see how quickly he can do that.
Yeah, I think he starts to realize that the show could have longevity.
And then our weather report.
Yeah, so in our post-merge alone, we had 7 days of rain, included with 1 day of minor flooding and 2 days of major flooding. That brings the rain total to 10 of the 42 days, and then 2 days of notable wildfires creeping up on the camp. So between the 2 seasons so far, this certainly has been the worst for weather.
10 days of rain on the first season.
Do you put a heavier influence on things like wildfires and floods rather than just total number of days of rain to put it into being better or worse than other seasons?
I mean, I guess I'm just going to look at the severity of the storms. We had a couple really bad ones in Borneo, but what we saw in Australia, I mean, when I mark down rain, I don't just say rain. I say storm. I say
torrential downpour.
And there were 3 of those here in the Outback, and that flash flood and needing to rebuild and then having to deal with wildfires all the same. This was a rough one.
Yeah.
And the heat, from what I understand, is also worse than Borneo.
Yes.
And we're not even talking about that on the weather forecast.
You don't have those cool ocean breezes.
There's more extremes, definitely. And I was mainly just asking just so we know going forward. I don't think there's any question that this was worse.
Yeah.
Oh, no question.
All right, so real last thing is the season rankings. It's really easy to start with. We only have 2 seasons. But I think Borneo is still better than Australia just because I think the second half of Australia, there was some really boring parts. So I'm going to go Borneo 1, Australia 2.
Yeah, and I would agree just because the things that I like more about the Australian Outback is that there is a lot more strategy that's very, very obvious. You don't have the innocence of Borneo, which I do like as well. But overall as a season, I do agree that Borneo would be better.
And I'm going to go ahead and be the dissenter. I actively like the Outback more than Borneo. I mentioned this in the first podcast. I watched season 1, and I didn't go on to 2 because I wasn't all of that interested. Borneo was good. The Outback gave me Tina, and call me crazy, but a pagonging is far more boring than I think what we got in the second half of the Outback, with the exception of the finale, which again you can just skip right to the final tribal council and reunion show. But I like Outback considerably better than 1. But that's a high bar to clear. I liked Borneo a lot.
And I think the players are overall much, much, much better than in Borneo. It's just this season overall, as a whole, that's just how I rank them.
I enjoyed Borneo for things other than the strategy. Like, if we're just going off strategy, Borneo's probably the weakest season.
For sure.
But I watch Survivor for more than strategy. I know that's the focus of this podcast, but, you know, I'm not one of those people who just loves game bots. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, a good game bot can be fun. But I love your wacky characters, too. Like, I'm not just here for the strategy. As much as I love it, I'm here to be entertained.
You know, I will admit Borneo's better on human moments, and it has Greg.
Yes.
Those two alone help separate it from the pack, but I tended to enjoy my Outback watching experience more, so that was why I ranked it the way I did. But I've got no qualms with someone saying the OG is better.
Hey, that's why we're doing this, though.
Yep. Anything else anybody wants to add?
I'm good.
All right, so the next episode will be us doing the Season 3 Africa pre-merge, which I'm very excited for. Derek, you know nothing about that season.
I know nothing. I didn't even know it was Africa.
I'm excited. This will be fun.
It's a cool environment, too.
Yeah, it's memorable, put it that way. I like Season 3. I'm pumped.
Even if I can't remember, like, many of the actual, like, contestants in it,
Sure.
I remember the season as a whole being fun.
Yes. In the meantime, I got nothing else for you. So, head back to camp.
Head back to your lads.
See you next time.
Bye.